to the Behavioral Gabaret. I'm Carrie Woodward. I'm a board certified behavior analyst and an early intervention specialist.
And I'm Javen Encarnacion, a behavior analyst and consultant.
Okay, in this episode, we're diving into chapter 21, group control. Skinner explores how groups like families, workplaces, governments, our entire systems of culture, control the behavior of their members through shared reinforcement and punishment systems.
Right. It's not just one person controlling another here. Skinner's looking at how groups can create moral codes and social norms and expectations, and how those systems shape everything from cooperation to conformity.
We'll talk about how group control can keep societies running smoothly, but also how it can stifle individuality or create tension when the group's goals don't align with the individual's needs anymore.
Yeah. So let's jump in and talk about how the group becomes one of the most powerful controlling forces in human life.
Okay, groups label certain behaviors as good, which are reinforced, or bad, which are punished. And over time, these verbal labels form the basis of morality and ethics. How does this process play out today? In families, schools, online spaces? Is morality just the collective reinforcement history of a culture? This these topics are very interesting for you and I to discuss, Javen. I know this is not the religion episode, but I mean the idea of morality being separate from religion is a very interesting thing for me.
Yes. You know what I was thinking about whenever I was reading this? This kind of goes back to my micro hobbies, but I got really into pirate culture as its own type of community. And
Uh,
so now let's talk about that. So in
yeah.
and juxtapose it to religion, for example, that identifies things as good and bad. We both have histories with that, but then pirate culture also did too. And many of the things that were bad in religion were okay or good in pirate culture.
Because it
But
benefited the group.
because it benefited the group and it was aligned with the group's morals and codes. But
Mm,
there were things that religion may have said were good that the pirate code had considered bad. And so how I think so the groups label certain behaviors and repertoires as good or bad based on survival for the group and us for the group to maintain control.
yes. That's such an interesting example because like pirates sort of live off the grid, right? Like they're
Mhm.
like houseless. They don't have a space. But there are different, like around the world, when you think about different cultures, there are different things that are considered bad or good. And maybe even thinking back before, like thinking back about Native American groups before they were colonized, like they probably have very different ideas of good and bad because of how it benefited their
Mhm.
group. And then you have a new group that comes in and they need to exert control. And so they deem different sets of behaviors as good. Like, when we think back to like the early colonization of the US, and there's probably a lot of murder that's happening that you would think would go against what the morality would be of their religion at that time. And yet that was deemed good because it gave them the land that they wanted in order to be able to settle here in the United States. There's
Well,
like there's
and
change too.
think about even that. So collective reinforcement history for a specific culture. So the Puritans who came here from England, we tell this fantastical tale about how they were escaping persecution. They were religious radicals who
Yeah.
came here and they were fleeing a culture that they called bad.
Uh-huh.
And so they created their own rules and they came here to establish to live within, kind of a commune. And so um, their ways of life were very different and probably bad to the indigenous peoples that were here too. Many of
Right.
the things they did may have been bad or wrong. And so if you think about even things like health and cleanliness and their
Hmm.
ideas that a lot of the rules and the laws in Leviticus and Exodus and the first five books of the Bible were essential for
Survival.
the the survival of the people. And so instructional histories and contingencies of reinforcement at play. And then we start creating the group starts creating rules and morality and adding verbal behavior to it.
Well, and the idea, and I think that one of the questions gets into this a little bit more, but when rules aren't being followed, then changing them to something that's moral, and like, does that make it a stronger contingency for somebody? Are they more likely to engage in the rule governed behavior if it's described as something that's immoral as opposed to just the rule for our society?
I think that's a really interesting question. And I would, at a different time, I would have said yes to some people, yes, like some people are more likely to follow rules that are considered moral and avoided engaging in behavior that would be considered immoral, based only on rule governed behavior, only as a rule governed response. Now I have a much bigger hesitancy to say yes to anyone because just from my instructional history that even people that I thought um, wouldn't are basically everyone has secrets. And
Mm,
whenever there's a cult, there's a cultural rule. Skinner talks about how the contingencies at play, what we do on Sunday is governed by what's happening at Sunday and where we are at Sunday and what's happening on Monday. So
mhm,
the person might uh, engage in what's considered godly behavior on Sunday, and then Monday through Saturday engage in other types of behavior, um, with varying degrees. I think
yeah.
it's the varying degrees, but does he talks about how it restricts the individual and creates this tension, this rub, because
Uh-huh.
they're
Uh-huh.
people are have different reinforcers, and
Yeah.
you're essentially in many ways restricting reinforcers. What do you think?
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I wonder, I don't know, I just think it's an interesting take that like the good and the bad that come to be established in any given group are done so for the sake of the group or maybe the group leader
Mm-hmm.
in some regards. Um, and then they've create systems to control the behavior of the group for the benefit of the group or the group leader. I just think it's such an interesting take on how groups, and even if we call those rules morals, how you can see how that bleeds to religion very nicely.
Well, and religion, but also, in America, politics.
Uh-huh.
So the political sphere, I think you and I have talked about the policing of language. I had a recent history where someone talked about a word that's considered like a faux pas, I guess now, to
Oh,
say, and tied it back to certain things that, even a year or two ago it wasn't an issue. And so the way that rules change makes me wonder who benefits from us believing that, and how and why, and
yeah.
what's the impact that it's having.
Right. And like the people that form them, is it to benefit the group or is it to benefit themselves?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think that that's like I don't know that there's an answer to that. I think it's just a thing to ponder.
And
Um,
so I think what I wonder is where does, with the group leader, is it personal control? Is it group control?
yeah.
Are they interplaying at the same time?
Well, let's think about the pirates again. Like,
Mm-hmm.
how does the group control help make them cooperate together to accomplish their desired outcomes, which is, I guess, to board other ships and take the treasure, right? You're the one that did the
So
deal on the pirates.
yeah, so the pirates had they had a bad rap. Oftentimes they weren't. They would loot. They'd find other sailors, but they were really and oftentimes they were like assassins for or mercenaries for other governments. And
Oh,
so they would do other government's dirty work. So they were always engaged in some type of combat. So there are rules about like, you know, we're eating this much food. They were at sea. They didn't know how long they'd be at sea. They didn't know if they'd get held up because of a battle and the ship would get ruined or something. And you had to trust the people on that were on your ship. And they would create these codes about and have inheritors. So if I died, I could make Carrie my inheritor. So she would get all of my things, including my like riches and Tortuga. And they engaged in behavior that would be considered immoral to some degree. So, you know, like engaging in sexual behaviors, um, drugs and alcohol, but they also were played a huge part in the slave trade, which today we would consider immoral, but at the time was not. And
yeah,
so their rules and laws shaped helped them to control the people that were in charge. But then you would have mutinies where one person would, oftentimes it was one or a few individuals would cause a mutiny against the captain, which was a huge law. And so if they lost, it was like death. But
yeah,
if they won, they overtook the ship and they took control of the ship and they were able to modify or adjust the codes and the morals. And so thinking about that and comparing it to like the Puritans coming here and having laws,
yeah,
or
yeah,
the Catholic Church today versus the Mormon Church, and everyone has different laws and beliefs. And the source of control and group control, even though they seem similar, there are huge differences that also put them against each other. And so why are they functioning?
Well, and this will be something that we'll cover when we talk about the religion chapter. So I'm not
Yeah.
going to like get too deep into it, but in hearing you talk about the pirates, it's like yes, you still have a group leader,
Mm-hmm.
but they're all working toward a common goal,
Yes.
right? And they have all acknowledged this as the common goal, and then you have one person that's helping to guide everybody to make, to do the group that's engaging in group control to this outcome, this desired outcome. And I feel like when you look at religion, that desired outcome is like a distant future and unknown, going to heaven. So then
Yeah.
it looks it's like this very strange you unpacking the strange motivation of the group leaders in religion is like, is it truly just altruistic? You just want these people to get to heaven? Or is there
Mm-hmm.
something more sinister? And then I think about classrooms where you have a teacher and kids and a desire for group control and how they could probably take a page out of the pirate book. And if they all like, let's talk about our common objective. What's the thing that we're all wanting to accomplish together as a group? Because it's not really, it's like they're all individual students doing their own things. And yet you have one person at the head trying to make sure that they're all behaving well. That if they all could just come together on a common objective and be working together as a team, as a group, they might have much better classroom management than they do right now.
That's a really good point. And I think probably one of the biggest issues is the common objective.
Yeah, right. When the
Maybe
group leader's
oftentimes they aren't,
objective is different than the group's objective, that
or a
might be.
child's objective
Yes.
is
Yeah,
different.
exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so then the end, Skinner argues that understanding group control makes ethics more honest, exposing the real contingencies behind moral rules and authority. So, how can this behavioral lens help us better understand modern systems of control, like laws or institutions or even social movements? Like, think that's an interesting one, social movements, because we're living in a time
Mm-hmm.
right now where there's some pretty big social movements happening in our culture. And that's one where I feel like that understanding of group control really makes a lot of sense. A leader, but people that all share a common objective. If I'm thinking about like the No Kings protest that's been happening.
I think about I don't know if you were on Facebook when Joseph Kony, it was this guy who got really famous, and I think it was Sudanese, or the Congo Civil War, and there was this huge campaign to like make him famous and like light him up because he was creating child soldiers. What was the
Oh,
desired outcome? I didn't know, I was 18 at the time. I didn't know anything about the that type of war. But a movement like that compared to No King's Day, for example, we know what's at stake there. But social media campaigns that are tied, especially to other countries or to things that are
Mhm.
happening outside of uh, our area of contact, are a lot more interesting. Like when you're thinking about group control, because why was that Joseph Kony campaign a huge thing?
Why did it matter to people who
Yes,
had nothing to do with it?
obviously it matters, but
No, no, but
why? And not to
and
question you,
no,
that's a
no, no, no.
legitimate.
I'm
Uh,
with you. Like, what real stakes did
yeah,
some American
there
sitting at
are
Facebook?
some.
Yeah,
Hmm. I think there are real stakes for those kids, but
yes,
why did we get? I got so passionate about it for a hot 3 days, and then I just moved on. And that is the nature of
that's
social media, where we
yeah,
get passionate about things. But why, for group control, what does that mean? What are the contingencies there? I think the behavioral lens helps. And I'm bringing all this up to say that like a behavioral lens can help us understand complex systems and complex experiences like that, to really get to the root of why is this happening.
yeah,
I don't know. I think it really helps understand, and it removes a lot of the language that we have about morals and, oh, this is the right thing to do. We need to help these people, and let's get everyone engaged. And then, wait, why are we doing this? Who's
yeah.
benefiting?
You know,
What
I just
groups are benefiting?
right. I was just thinking about laws because in the question we're talking about, like, how does it help us better understand like the laws? And I was thinking about when I used to work at an agency, and there would be some new rule that was going into effect, some new administrative rule that I needed the other BCBAs to follow. How like there was immediate pushback on having to change what they were doing or doing something that was more effortful given this new rule unless they understood why. Like when they
Hmm.
understood why their behavior of doing something differently was benefiting the organization as a whole, then they were like, okay, I guess I understand and I'll do it. But there was pushback on like, I, this is stupid. I'm not gonna do all this extra work. This is stupid until they understood why. And I feel like we could make that argument for so many laws in our country where people don't understand why it's the law. Don't you think? Like there's a
Yeah,
or for kids at school or like
I wonder if some of that also goes back to the common goal. So, oh yes, we're
yeah.
aligned for that. Whereas a lot of laws are like, no, I don't have the same goal as you. Or is it the pushback a form of counter control too?
Oh, yeah. You very well
And
could be.
because, yeah, and is there some, oh, they're not going to tell. I think that's usually my response is, oh, no one's going to tell me what to do. Um, and so I think I can relate. But I think that's a really good point. Laws and institutions, a lot of people don't know why we're doing things and why things are important to
Right.
help the group.
Well, and I think it also speaks to that group, that cohesive common objective speaks to the dissatisfaction that at least here in the US, most people feel about their representation in Congress. It
Hmm.
feels as if they are no longer a part of our group and doing things that are benefiting our group as a whole. Like they feel separate. They feel like they're just up there making the decisions and that they're not actually, we're not in this together fighting together where that's what it's supposed to be. You're supposed to just be our representative that goes
Right.
and is advocating for the things that are going to benefit us as for our group. Um, and it doesn't feel like that anymore. And I think that's part of the dissatisfaction too, like their low approval rating. It's like, all right, well that takes care of group control for us. And I think we did a pretty good job of understanding all of the things about all of the groups.
It's the